Dan Andrews easing a number of restrictions for long-suffering Victorians. But the mask mandate remains for so-called high-risk areas, including shopping centres, supermarkets and even schools. On that issue, the Premier seemed a little confused today.
Schools have had their own approach often when it comes to masks, but again, there's no requirement per se. That would be dealt for students. That would be dealt with on a school-by-school basis.
Well, actually, Premier, your own rules have made masks mandatory in high schools and learning institutions. The state government's coronavirus website states people aged 12 years and older must wear a face mask in public indoor settings, including schools, early childhood education centres and places of study. Premier, it's time to unmuzzle Victorians, particularly kids who have suffered enough. Victorian children have paid a high price for the gross incompetence of your government. They have missed more school than their counterparts in the rest of the country, and not only has their academic progress taken a battering, so has their emotional and mental development. Why in God's name should they have to be masked in schools when there's no mask requirement for people in nightclubs or restaurants or bars? And how does it make sense to force Victorians to wear a mask in shopping centres or supermarkets or big Bunnings, but not on the dance floor of the local discotheque where Nicholas likes to frequent? Where is the medical advice behind your decisions, Premier? Where is the consistency? And talking about consistency, now that you have finally called a Royal Commission into Crown Casino, how can you justify your failure to call a Royal Commission into the catastrophic failures of Victoria's hotel quarantine and contact tracing programs? Surely the disastrous outcomes of your government's botched COVID-19 response, including the loss of more than 800 lives and countless livelihoods, warrants a proper investigation. Of course, the Dan cult prefer to compare Victoria to the UK or Mexico instead of to other states in Australia. Nick, you're always one to quickly jump to Dan Andrews' defence. How can you possibly defend his failure to call a Royal Commission into the quarantine fiasco? That whitewash will not do.
Well, I mean, we've already had a commission of inquiry into what happened in the hotels there, and, you know, everybody from the Premier down gave evidence.
And said they couldn't remember anything.
A health minister lost her job, very senior minister in the government. The most senior public servant in Victoria lost his job.
After
and
Peter Credlin
numerous others. Well, I mean, look, you can make all these claims.
None of that, it's not a claim, it's an absolute fact. The only reason Eccles stepped down is that Peter Credlin turned up to that press conference, pointed out inconsistencies, demanded to see the phone logs, and suddenly the man was gone after being very much secure in his job. You and your lot need a Royal Commission so we can actually get to the bottom of what happened.
Rita, you have turned the art of nitpicking into an
800 dead Victorians is a nitpicking, I'm sorry. Countless livelihoods lost is not nitpicking.
No.
Victoria has had 30 times more deaths than the rest of the country, COVID deaths. That's not nitpicking.
What I mean by nitpicking is you go through the announcement of today's restrictions and you pick up small things, frankly, small things that you don't agree with, which actually in all cases you will find there is a medical basis behind.
Where is the medical basis? Release
secondly,
the medical data.
You say that the Board of Inquiry was a whitewash, but when I point out to you the senior ministers and senior public servants and the number of heads that roll, you then try and say that was only all to do with Sky News. Now, I'm not saying for a second there wasn't good journalism going on there by Sky News, but you can't just go and dismiss all these senior people losing their jobs and say, oh, it was a whitewash.
Dan Andrews throwing the health minister under the bus to save his own skin had nothing to do with the inquiry, and you know that perfectly well. She said at the inquiry precisely what Dan Andrews said, what his jobs minister said. In fact, all of them said. I can't recall. I don't know who made the key decision to use private security. So unless you can tell me what that inquiry uncovered in terms of who made that critical decision, that it was a pointless, expensive whitewash.
Rita, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to call it. You are just plain anti-Dan Andrews. That bloke could cure cancer and you'd find something to complain about.
Oh, now Dan's the victim here, of course.
All right.